My next guest on the Quantum Shift podcast is Dr. Fred Johnson, the founder of Initiative One. I was going to read you his biography in this introduction, but today's podcast has me profoundly moved. Spent a little over 2 hours speaking with Dr. Fred, and while he was discussing his life story, his business journey, and what the team at Initiative One does on a daily basis, I found that nearly every anecdote, every story, every twist and turn of his career resonated with me on a deep, deep level. If you're an executive that's hit a rough patch, if you're a leader that's just trying to sharpen their axe and improve yourself, if you are living and breathing in this world, you will benefit from watching this podcast. He's a special human being, and I really hope you stick around to watch the entirety of the podcast. This is one of those rare individuals that when you finish speaking with them, you want to make sure that as many people on this planet can hear their message. He was shockingly humble, definitively vulnerable, transparent, charming, eloquent, and has a message of positivity and joy and hope for us as human beings, as leaders, as individuals, as parents, as employees and employers. This is a good one, gang. Enjoy Dr. Fred Johnson of Initiative One.
Hi, Chris. I'm Dr. Fred Johnson. I'm the founder of Initiative One. We are a global leadership company that works with 29 different professional fields. I'm known as in the NFL, I'm known as the GM Whisperer. In corporate settings, I'm known as a corporate architect. In leadership settings, I'm known as a transformational leadership expert that can change the trajectory of leaders and the organizations that they lead.
Wow. I will say thank you for that introduction. When we first connected, I don't know that I've seen somebody with your pedigree and your exposure to professional sports organizations and the sort of front office aspect of that, as well as I have to say in my research I was very impressed by your team, which we'll get to
Thank you.
in a minute. But I think it's just really speaks to you and what you're doing with your business.
You know that one of the ladies on my team, she, Rebecca, who you've been talking to,
Yeah.
she was the producer for the Rolling Stones for 7 years.
Wow.
Does that tell you? I mean, she produced for Eric Church, for Pink Floyd. I mean, for Leonard Skinner. I mean, this lady has elevated our game like you wouldn't believe.
I mean, you could see it across the board, just, titles and backgrounds but we'll get to the team. Right now, we're going to focus on you.
Okay.
I want to start with, because the first thing that popped out for me and every red-blooded American guy that's sitting here that is like, oh, you have Dr. Fred on there, wants to understand the manner with which you were initially exposed to interacting with professional sports organizations.
That's a funny story. Okay. So what question you're going to ask me for that?
Well, I'm just curious, how did it all start? How did you meet anyone within a professional sports organization to begin with?
Well, that is a great story. It's a great question. And let me just say this. It's amazing how much, quote, luck plays in your success. I really don't believe in the concept of luck. I believe in the concept that if you are prepared and you are committed to living what you teach. And what you teach is who you are, and it's your mindset. Opportunities always happen at the right time, in the right place, with the right people. And it happens on its terms, not your terms. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
so given that, I had just moved our company. I had just moved from Scottsdale, Arizona, where I started my company, to Green Bay, Wisconsin in the middle of February.
Whoa, why would you do that?
Well, our company had outgrown our footprint. We were now, because of word of mouth, we were now serving clients in every corner of the United States. And it was really difficult serving from the extreme southwest corner when you're dealing with three different time zones, and you're flying to a meeting in New York City. Because of the time logistics, it's taking you a day to get to New York City. You've missed the time to meet. Now, the
Yeah.
next day, it's time to meet for a 1 hour meeting. And you don't get home until late that night or early the next morning. It was a logistical nightmare. So our company needed to get into the center of the United States for logistical reasons. And so we actually did a search, and there were four companies, four towns that the search firm recommended. One of them being Chicago, but if you've ever flown much in O'Hare, that's a nightmare. So that's defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
Minneapolis was too expensive. Grand Rapids, if you're not a Dutch Reformed person in that culture, you're not going to ever break in.
Yeah.
And the last one was Green Bay, Wisconsin. And they said, ironically, it has as strong a brand recognition as Scottsdale, Arizona. And logistically, we highly recommend it. And so it was a great move for us.
Wow.
And it took me out of being a little minnow in a huge pond to being a big fish in a little minnow pool.
Yeah.
Now, so here's what happened. I'm flying back from Indianapolis on a plane after a speaking engagement, not realizing that I'm the only non Green Bay Packer executive in first class flying back. While I've got a speaking engagement that night, and I'm signing autographs for a book.
Mm.
And this kid is sitting next to me. The moment we took off, he's got narcolepsy. I mean, he immediately goes into
Out cold. Yeah.
out cold. Well, I didn't realize it until later is because he's so sleep deprived, and I'll tell you that story in a second. But so he's snoring like a freight train. I'm laughing in my head. When we land, he wakes up and says, "Hey, what do you do?" And it was in the middle of a snowstorm, so we couldn't get off the plane right away. So I had 15 minutes, and I said, I'm thinking this is going to be another one of those nice, polite plane conversations.
Right.
It's never going to be meaningful, but be kind. And I said, well, I'm a leadership. Um, I'm known as a leadership expert, and I'm a author, and I'm a speaker. He goes, that's cool. Do you do any executive coaching? And I said, well, to in a I work with very high profile folks, and so it's a very limited audience that I work with. He goes, would you be willing to coach me? And I'm thinking, okay. I mean, the kid literally looks like he's 15 years old.
Okay.
Okay. And he says, by the way, total setup. What do you think about Brett Favre and what's just happened? How he's just traded to the Jets. Well, I'm an expert in change, deep change, and what bold change does. Didn't know that this was the guy who was the one who traded Brett Favre he was the one who traded him to New York.
Stop.
And the Packers are getting all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What do you think about that?"
Yeah.
Knowing he was setting me up. I said, "Actually, I thought it was brilliant. The timing, because when you're trading what we call a sacred cow, there's only 2 or 3 times you can have a window to get away with that, and the
Right.
window was perfect."
Yeah.
And I explained to him why. And he goes, "Wow." And he goes, "You know who that is over there?" And that's right across. He goes, "That's Ted Thompson. He's the GM of the Green Bay Packers." This is what I'm saying to him. He goes, "Really?"
Yeah.
That's his boss.
Wow.
He hands me his card and he says, "I really am serious about coaching you. John Schneider, um, head of football operations of the Green Bay Packers."
Wow.
And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't step my foot in my mouth."
It was an awful, awful timing. Who would
Yeah,
have?
and he was checking me out, and it caught him so much that I just basically told them that what they did was brilliant, and I gave them the science behind what they did was brilliant. He
Okay.
calls me the next day. I
Well,
thought
before
I
you go into the call, I am very curious if you're willing. Why was it perfect timing?
Yeah. Well, this is exactly why it's perfect timing. Whenever you're dealing with what we call a sacred cow in any organization is it can be a way of doing business, it can be traditions, methods, but most of the time it's dealing with personalities. People that at one point had played a major part, but over time their drama has become so big that it outdoes the good of the things that they've done, and they burn bridges, and every sacred cow has enough supporters, and people have seen in the past those people take on that sacred cow and get squished by that sacred cow. So there has to be a moment when the influence of the person who's confronting the sacred cow has to be either equal or greater than the influence of the sacred cow. Make
Ye-
and so
Yeah.
that person has to have gained enough momentum in the organization
Right.
that he or she now has enough emotional support by key leaders
Right.
to say, "I'm with this guy."
Right.
Now, so that's one. There has to be momentum. In that particular season, it was the second year with Mike McCarthy. The first year they had gone, I believe it was 4-12. The second year they went 11-3.
Mm.
So he's got all kinds of
Yeah.
momentum.
Upward momentum. Yeah.
Yes. Also, people knew that Favre had become a cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a guy who insisted on having his own space in the locker room because he didn't want to deal with the kids. He wanted his own locker room.
Yeah. And he wasn't mentoring. I saw a whole documentary where it was like,
No,
there's a pretty darn good rookie that came in
that's
that
right.
he didn't spend
That's
much
right.
time with at all. Yeah.
Oh, and that had created some issues. And plus, Rodgers was now ready,
Yeah.
which made another reason why you've got plan B, and plan B at this point is probably going to be better than plan A for the first time in 16 years.
Mm.
Okay. Now, here's the biggie. It's the final game against the New York Giants. And he was told in overtime, "Here's all I want you to do. Drive the ball 15 yards down the center of the field. We've got Mason Crosby who can kick the field goal.
Mm.
That's all I want you to do, Brett." That's it. Brett says, "Okay, coach," goes in and promptly calls an audible and throws a long bomb that gets intercepted in the end zone. New York drives, kicks, and wins and wins the NFC championship, goes to the Super Bowl. People knew inside, they knew that story. Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
And so I'm at I'm at a gas station the day after. Mike McCarthy, it's a little town, 80,000 people. Mike McCarthy and I are at the same gas station. He knows me. I don't know him well, but he knows me because John had talked to, I mean, people had talked to him about my work.
Right.
And I said, "Hey, I know you're pissed about last night, but it's a gift." He goes, "What?" I said, "It's a gift." I said, "If he hadn't thrown that interception, making a change would have been 5 times more difficult, and you're never going to lead your team until until either it's whoever wins that moment, called the Battle of the Sacred Cows.
Yeah.
Whoever wins that moment leads the team." And I said, "It will never be your team until this issue is addressed."
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And
That's
not
powerful to
only,
say to a grown man. It'll never
yes,
be your team
it
unless
will
this.
never, and tell that to an NFL coach that most of them are control freaks.
Ooh. Ooh.
And you could see it was the eyebrow. I mean, it was moving in his head. And I said, the best gift that he ever could have given you was that interception. I said, you got to look at this in the long run.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know it, but he took that conversation and went back and started the whole premise, because I shared with him at a gas station the science behind cataclysmic change.
I mean, it really is a lesson in. You started off talking about luck, and I agree with you. Some like, luck. You make your own luck. You show up prepared. You show up with your expertise in your back pocket. You give your real opinion when asked. And when opportunity knocks, you're prepared.
And
You
you love
obviously,
what you do, and you're passionate about it, and you love the people you serve.
yeah, yeah. So uh, I'm very curious. Look, we skipped a lot. We went right to Arizona, and then you're moving to Green Bay. When you were younger, were you always structured and had this mindset, and I'm going to go into was there a plan? Was Dr. Fred at 15 saying, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go, this is how I want to do it?
It's certainly not very NFL like, but my dad was a pastor um, of um, uh, of congregations in the South and the Midwest, and he instilled in me a love for people. He instilled in me, being raised in Appalachia,
Mm,
where um, you didn't have much. I
right.
mean, my two brothers and I shared the same bicycle,
Mm,
um, and I was left-handed. My younger brother was left-handed. My older brother was right-handed, which means my older brother got the first baseball glove. And my brother and I had to learn how to take our hands out of it, like someone who was handicapped. We had to learn how to catch a ball, catch it under it, pull it out, because we couldn't afford a baseball glove.
wait, did you really had to do that? Yeah, I'm thinking about
Yeah,
the Yankee pitcher, right? There was I forget his name.
yeah.
He
He
got the
played for Detroit.
Yeah, and he put it on his
And
put it on the stub.
played I Jim, he played for Michigan and played for Detroit, but that's what we had to learn how to do that. Well, in that kind of environment, all you have is people. And we developed such a deep love and respect for genuine people in West Virginia, back then. Um, those folks weren't fakes. I mean, they were real. And it taught me the value of loving people, accepting people, respecting people for who they are, not for what they do, not for the toys that they acquire. And that was so ingrained in me that leadership for me, by the time I was 10, it was all about showing respect and honoring people, which is today, that's all what leadership is about.
Yeah.
And so I have a, a advanced degree, a postdoctorate degree in leadership development. Um, but I was a pastor I went on to become a pastor, got a degree, a doctorate in theology.
That's what your
Um,
doctor's in. That's interesting.
it's crazy. And I'm having 32 CEOs from the big three in Detroit. I'm pastoring a huge church in Detroit, and 32 CEOs have been attracted to, for some reason, everywhere I went, the folks that came to my congregations were either college professors or very elite executives, because the church doesn't deal well with those folks.
Right.
I knew how to speak their language. I was a big thinker like them. I was a visionary. I was articulate. And so in that congregation came a lady who had just led Cadillac to what was called the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award in the 90s, in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was the award in the world for the greatest company in the world,
Whoa.
awarded by the president.
Wow.
Well, she had been with a gentleman for 23 years in Japan. His name was Edwards Deming, Dr. Edwards Deming, who revolutionized what leadership is when he went to Toyota and taught them, if you want to change your company and transform your company, start listening to your people.
Right.
The folks up on the 7th floor in GM are not your smartest folks. It's the folks who are dealing with the widgets on the floor. They will tell you what the problems are.
What can I ask the most obvious question? Why is that premise? Why do you think that that premise is so difficult for very smart people to comprehend? Is it?
Because of egos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of egos. If your entire identity is based on getting praise from people, oh, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart, and nobody but a car guy can do anything like this. And all of a sudden it takes some guy who doesn't have a high school degree, high school um, diploma, and is making $20,000 a year, who can come up with a better idea than you. And if you're insecure, gaining credit is everything. And so, and now you're not getting credit. And so it's all about insecurity. Well, when Deming went to Japan, he was able to show them, is it about your ego, or do you want your company to be great? And if you want your company to be great and they become great, you're going to get all the applause that you can handle. Okay. So you guys got it bass backwards.
Yeah.
So they spent, I mean, they had been kicked out of GM for this philosophy.
Yeah.
Rosetta, who was in my congregation, I'll tell you about her.
Please.
She had been, Deming, Rosetta was Dr. Rosetta Riley. She had a doctorate in economics from UCLA. She had met Deming early in his career. They both went to GM to transform GM. GM said, this thing about listening to people closest to the product is a bunch of crap. It's never going to fly in the United States. Get out. And they kicked him out.
What?
They went all over the world for 2 years trying to find one company that would be open to this philosophy of leadership. And it was this little fledgling company called Toyota.
Yeah. Wow.
And they spent 20 something years developing today what is called the lean process. It was actually an American process. It was called the Toyota Automotive Production System. It was never the Toyota Automotive Production System. It was an American leader, two American leaders who had been rejected by a major automobile company. I mean, can you imagine if GM would have listened to them?
Wow. You're kind of blowing my mind there, because I feel like that would have changed the literal trajectory of the U.S. economy.
The world would be completely different today.
Like, seriously?
Russia would have never had a chance to develop an economy. China would have never had a chance to develop an economy. It's amazing what little arrogant decisions of ego can do to change the world 30 years later.
Wow.
So they were there for 20-something years until he had a heart attack. And so the whole philosophy was leadership is not about who's in charge. Leadership is about who is humble and by their humility can appreciate the gifts of other people and not be threatened by the gifts of other people, and can be the kind of gracious person to attract those people, and together can have an incredible collective impact that can be transformative. That's what Deming and Dr. Rosetta Riley did. And so Rosetta, after Deming had a heart attack, came back to the United States. By that time, Jack Smith was the chairman of GM. I'm a 34-year-old kid who has just come from the backwoods of West Virginia and southern Indiana, leading this congregation that this big church in Detroit found out about me. They for 3 years they tried to recruit me and to go to serve them in Michigan, but I didn't want to leave my people, and because of my commitment to relationships, I finally went. She had come back from Japan. Jack Smith, the chairman, said, "Look, would you change our company the way that you all did in Toyota?" And so he said, "I will keep the wolves off of you for 3 years if you will develop a team-based leadership process for the first and produce the first team-based product in America that no company has ever done before." And it was the Cadillac STS that they used as the platform. Well, Rosetta put that team together and was able to convince the union to go along with it, was able to convince the leaders at GM on the 7th floor to go along with it. And it won them what was called the Baldrige Award, which was the highest award for business excellence in the world. That led to Saturn. So President Bush followed the story, President Bush Sr., and called Rosetta and said, "Would you become head of the Baldrige Foundation? Because we need to,
Right.
It's struggling. We need to reform it." And I'm 34 years of age, and I'm in her kitchen, and she and I are creating the 7 criteria for who wins the Baldrige Award. I'm her pastor.
Come on.
Yeah. She has joined our church.
Come on.
Yes. And here, Chris, here's the funny story.
You gotta let that sink in. It's like when there's when there's a dry plant, you put water on it and the water stays on top of the soil. You gotta
Yeah.
I gotta absorb that for a minute. So you're her pastor.
I'm her pastor. She was looking for a church when she had come back. She had led Cadillac to the Baldrige Award. Bush has just named her as the chief judge who determines who wins the award as the world's outstanding corporation based on leadership and culture. Okay.
And she taps you to help her. Right.
Well, she comes to my church for the first time. She's a little 5'1" African American Spitfire.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be a Spitfire to operate in the world of automotives back then, in a
Yeah.
man's world.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to take crap from anybody.
Yeah.
And the first Sunday she's there, she's on the front row. I've never met her. There's a couple thousand people there. She's listening to me. I make some bold statement. It pisses her off. She gets up in the middle of the service in front of all these people, walks out of the service. And this is a big, old money congregation with, these 10-foot tall doors that are like Fort Knox.
Yeah.
She opens it, turns around, flips me the bird,
No, come on.
flips me the bird, and then slams this door.
Come
and
on.
the congregation is just stunned. Well, what I didn't know, I mean, I was, and that was interesting. And,
What did you say what did you say to upset her? What was so upsetting to her?
it was some innocuous statement,
Yeah, you don't even remember.
But here's the thing. She was a savant, but she was so far up on the autism scale. That's where her brilliance came from. But she had zero people skills. Zero. Well, what she realized is that when no process can be any greater than the level of the relationship safety on a team, she didn't know how to create that. She had come back, and now she had the greatest organizations coming to her wanting to consult with them. And she came to me and she said, look, and again, I'm 34 years old. I'm the youngest pastor in this historic congregation.
Yeah.
And I have this ability to create these incredibly dynamic environments. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
At that point, it was raw. It was just instinct. It wasn't science yet. And she came to me and said, I don't know how you do it, but you have this ability. You got 32 CEOs in this congregation that somehow they all have these massive egos, and you're able to get them aligned around a purpose greater than themselves and create this incredible synergy. And I don't know how to do that. Now, I have created a little process called Six Sigma. I know about processes, but I can't do people.
Wait, she
Can
created
we,
Six
and
Sigma?
by the way, this was a week after she had walked out on me in the congregation. Then following Monday, she comes to my church into my office suite and says, I want to talk to your pastor. This is the lady who had flipped me off the night before, the day before. And she said, introduced me and said, I think you're brilliant. And I was so moved by what you were saying. I mean, this lady, I don't know who she is. But as I listened to her, I started going, I've never been around someone like this. And I thought, is she real? I didn't think she was real until I went into her house, and Hillary Clinton calls her while we're in the middle of our in the middle of our conversation.
Wow.
I mean, she has the guy from South Africa,
Mandela?
Mandela's picture of her and is on the wall. And I'm starting to go, okay,
She's a big deal. Yeah.
this is a big deal. I don't know how she got there. And I was just learning. But long story short, she said, let's form a company, me and you. And my first client a week later was McDonnell Douglas Aerospace. Then it was Whirlpool. Then it was Caterpillar. Then it was Chase Manhattan Bank. I'm 34 years old. It had nothing to do with me. It was her.
No, it
But
had everything to do with you. It had to do with the two of you, I suppose. I feel like It's a kind of a marriage made in heaven, right? Like,
Well, it was the law of attraction.
yeah,
The law of attraction says that if you have the desire that you want greatness in your life, not for you to be great, but to accomplish great things, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to change to be that kind of influencer,
yeah.
you end up attracting, when you're at an 8 and you want to be a 10, you end up attracting 10s.
I love.
And she was a 10 who wanted to pull me along, because when you're that person, you want to invest into someone because someone had invested into her, like Jack Smith had done with GM years before.
Right.
He was her mentor as well as Deming.
And I think it's interesting too, because it seems to me, and I don't know this for certain, but it seems to me that she was smart enough and humble enough to realize her blind spots and that you could fulfill that, and was like, I need that guy.
Well, let me tell you how great she was. We are now in, and this was why I was leading this congregation at the same time. I am speaking before 3,000 executives at the Ritz-Carlton in Palm Springs, California, at age 34. Rosetta, they had put this conference together to hear Rosetta. And Rosetta just brought me along. They didn't have a clue who this kid was. They didn't care. Well, I start speaking, and Rosetta puts me up first. Rosetta's used to walking in a room and presidents are fainting over her.
Right.
But she had this desire to elevate me.
Mm.
Talk about humility, greatness,
Yeah.
humility.
Yeah.
Make a long story short, when I was done, they lined up, people lined up at the end of the day because they wanted to speak to me.
Wow.
Rosetta was watching this. She had I was received so powerfully that Rosetta got up and said, "You know what? There are times that when you see an audience connecting and something unusual is going on, you got to let it happen and you get out of the way." This is what she's saying to all these people. And she said, "I want Dr. Fred to come back up.
Yeah.
Do you all want to hear more from Dr. Fred?"
Well, come on. You had an encore?
Yeah, that's what she did.
What?
Who
All right.
does that?
I have so many questions. What did you say? What were you talking about? Was it just like one of your sermons? Is that
I introduced myself as a pastor who is here doing leadership concepts.
Mm.
And I started talking about principle-based, value-based leadership.
Mm.
And because I was in a situation that you can't fire people, the only way you can lead people, you don't have a stick. It's inspiration, it's purpose, it's values.
Yeah.
And the CEO of McDonnell Douglas Aerospace asked me in front of 3,000 people. I'll never forget it. This guy is a conservative Jewish individual. He says to me, "Are you telling me that the church has something to say to corporate America?" I went, sir, I am a pastor, but I also know I have a captive audience. And I do not want to take advantage of this situation, because that was not why you asked me to be here. And he says, "Son, this is going on, but in the front row of the CEO, in front of all these executives, there's a hush." And the CE is going, he goes, "Son, I really appreciate your sensitivity.
Yeah.
Now answer the damn question." Only he didn't say damn.
All right.
And
What did you say? What did you
I
say?
went, oh, okay. And even then I was really careful because, you had to be careful
Sure.
of other people. You had, again, I was brought up to show respect.
Mm.
And I said, all I know is this, sir, is that the greatest leaders lead from a place that they are giving from a well that is constantly flowing over. They're not giving from a well that is empty, and they're giving from the dregs and the poison at the bottom of the well. And the only way that you can continually be a giver of pure water to other people who are seeking it is you better be connected to something larger and greater than yourself. That is the essence of strength. I never mentioned Jesus. Um, I didn't even mention God. I just but people were getting where I was coming from.
Mm.
And at the end, here's what happened. I don't know. Think about this. The head of HR came up to us before that day was out and said to Rosetta and um, I don't know how we're going to do this. We've never had anything like this happen before, but the CEO and the cabinet of McDonnell Douglas have asked us, can we extend this conference by another day? Think about that.
Wait.
Can we extend this conference for another day because they want to hear more from Dr. Fred? Now, think about the logistics of that. You're in
Oh
the
my!
Ritz
I am. I
Carlton.
am. I'm already like this.
I don't know how you got rooms that are booked for another conference. I mean, I have no idea how they pulled it off. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And Rosetta was watching this the entire time. Not one time did she ever go, excuse me, but I was the one who brought Dr. Fred here.
Mm.
Not one time. She elevated me. She taught me in that conference all over again what great, great, great leadership looks like. And it was about the result. It's not about the person. And it had a profound impact upon me. And even then, Chris, I wasn't willing yet to leave my congregation. And my congregation was pissed
Yeah.
because they didn't want to share me with corporate America,
Right.
which when that happened, when I came back that weekend, I missed my plane flying back to Detroit because people had lined up around the block because they wanted to talk to me. And it was all these executives that were talking about the spiritual dearth in their lives and how spirituality had hurt them and how their experiences with hurt had hurt them and caused them great pain.
Mm.
And I was able to just listen to them and speak to them at a level of deep, deep, deep need. And I missed my plane talking to them.
Wow.
On the weekend I got back, my congregation gave me an ultimatum. You got to make a choice.
Yeah.
I had just been speaking with a lady who taught me what servanthood was all about.
Yeah.
And here we're talking about servanthood, but it was always, I don't want you to serve anybody else except us.
Yeah. I want to hoard you. Yeah. Like.
I was
Right.
done.
Yeah.
It was only a matter of time before, but my identity was still so locked up in that it took me a while to have the courage to leave that place in my life. And so the whole scenario of this is that Rosetta was known as, when you do lean, when you do what she taught, lean creates massive results.
Right.
Using because of people, not at the expense of people.
Mm.
And so So now you going back to the question that you asked me at the beginning, it was being a pastor's son in deep Appalachia where where my dad made $2,000 um uh $6,000 a year.
Mm,
And it was being raised in that environment. It was having a postdoctorate degree in leadership and understanding, where it was having a sociology background from Arizona State, who that I learned how to look at leadership from the perspective and entire societal trends, which is basically how I'm differentiated from most leadership guys.
wow.
And then it was watching this, learning from this lady who was the highest ranking female leader in the world in terms of transformational change in processes in manufacturing. And then it was also being at that time, not knowing it, or being in, I was an addict at the same time in people pleasing.
Yeah.
Love addiction was my addiction, the need to be loved and affirmed. Um, and so, ironically, my postdoctorate degree was in addictive behaviors. I became an expert in addiction with other people, so I didn't have to deal with my own.
Oh, wow.
And so you got all this strange stew coming together,
Right.
and it created my entire approach to leadership. Eventually, that addiction caught up with me. I had a period of time where my life completely was broken, um, because when you play, it's only a matter of time before you pay. And and so in the late '90s is when my world fell apart. So Rosetta had prepared me up here, but it took my addictive um, confronting my addiction, and it took me 3 years to deal with it. I was suicidal. I tried to drive my car off the Golden State Bridge in March of 1998 when it all came out, and my congregation learned about it. The worst day in an addict's life is when you're found out. Um, it's actually the best day in your life if you embrace it.
Can you walk us
So,
through that and like what exactly happened?
well, I was. It's a problem when you're a pastor and you're being unfaithful to your wife, because what love addiction does, my dad was so committed to his people that our family was put way in the back burner. And so I had emotion, and by the way, not knowing it, my three siblings were dealing with similar situations in their own lives that I didn't know about. They didn't know about what I was dealing with. And but I was so needy for affirmation. I didn't get it from my dad. And so that's what we call an adult child of an alcoholic. That in a healthy family, the the mature parent is feeding you emotionally. In an addictive family, you're feeding the addict, and you're a child with this much emotional depth, and your dad needs you to feed him so he can, because he was raised by an alcoholic rageaholic.
Mm,
And so I'm a mess by my early 30s. I am a mess. Um, and um, and so I had this compulsion to be loved. Well, when you're a pastor and you also have this charismatic personality,
mm,
you're going to connect. Guess which opposite sex
yeah.
emotionally?
Yeah.
And once you're emotionally connected, it's only a matter of time before they're physically connected. And I had so much shame in my life because how did I get myself into this?
Yeah.
And so I lived with shame every moment. And when you got that kind of shame, you want to get the pain off of you. So guess what you do? You go to that moment to give you a quick dopamine, uh, adrenaline kick,
Yeah.
which is, go to that thing that's going to cause you shame in a moment, but it at least is going to make you feel wonderful. So it's this the addictive cycle.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't stop. Um, I couldn't stop. And so most people only change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing.
Right.
And for me, it took it coming out, and it all came out. A lady um, that I had jilted because I tried to cross the line of integrity back. We can't do this.
Mm.
Well, I'd already crossed the line, and she was upset, so she went to my congregation leadership.
Oh,
And by the way, it was the best thing that could have ever happened.
yeah.
I
Painful, but
lost
good for you.
in one day, Chris. I lost my reputation. I'd already lost my integrity. It was only a matter of time before my reputation would catch it. Um, I lost my job as one of the most well-known people in my entire denomination. My wife said, "Get out." Um, all literally in a matter of a couple hours. I thought my life was done. I tried to drive by this time I was in San Francisco. Um, and I had started a congregation that it had gone from 0 to 1,000 in about 3 months.
Wow.
And, um, but I was so full of shame. I knew I had gone up and down the Golden State Bridge for months trying to find a place where a Saturn vehicle could fit in an opening in a guardrail because I had so much shame. That day, I thought my life was over. And I tried to drive my car over, and I couldn't do it because I was in such shock that my body would not. I would say, "There it is, turn."
Yeah.
And by the way, all I had was underwear, white T-shirt, and socks because no wallet because my wife had literally thrown me outside the house. And I'm trying to drive up and down. I'm trying to kill myself. And I'm in such shock. I would say turn, but my body would not respond for 4 hours when my brother was a police officer. And he had put an APB because my wife had called him and said, "Look, Fred's in trouble.
Yeah.
I can't help him. I'm done with him, but I'm just telling you, I know his state of mind." Well, they put an APB on me. The state police in California found me going up and down the bridge. Um, and because I kept doing U-turns for 4 hours, going back to that place where that guardrail place was, that opening in the guardrails was. But I was in such shock, my mind wouldn't um, cooperate. Well, they found me. Think about this. I had no wallet. I had underwear. They gave me a pair of gym shorts, and they gave me the police officer gave me a pair of flip flops. My sister was a flight attendant for Southwest. She had made arrangements to get me on a plane with no ID, and I flew, and they put me on a plane, literally from a police car. I don't know what happened to my Saturn. It's somewhere in the sitting in on the Golden State Bridge, and they put me on a plane, and I'm thinking my life is over. I've never felt that kind of pain in my entire life. Um, And when I got off at the Phoenix airport, I saw my mom and my sister, and I immediately went into a coma right there, flopped down. Because my therapist later said that was the only place of safety in your entire life. And so I was in a coma for 2 days.
Wait, a
I came
literal
out of it.
coma. Your body just shut down.
Yeah, m- I because of years of being a con artist managing all these things, and all it took was someone coming along and pulling the card out, and it was all built on an illusion. It was built on lies.
Yeah.
And so I was suicidal. I was suicidal for 3 months. My mom would not leave me alone. Um, and I went to therapy every day for 2.5 years to try to figure out why my life had become such a mess. Well, it was during that brokenness that my heart began to get aligned with the cognitive gifts that I had been given. And so that's when um all of that brokenness was the shaper of my life. And we started this company not based on 23 years of education,
Mm.
not based on meeting Rosetta. It was based upon I had nothing else to offer except complete surrender and saying I was willing to do whatever it took. And that's when I learned about vulnerability. And that's where I learned about authenticity. And that's where I learned about transparency, because it wasn't a leadership gimmick at that point. It wasn't a leadership philosophy. In my therapy, I learned that what will keep you in addiction is lying and shame. And I started having to work on when people would ask me my story, I had to tell them the truth because I was a pro at a con artist at telling people things that weren't true,
Yeah.
to protect my mistress, whatever that, because I was multi addicted by that time. I had 4 or 5 different addictions. And so, I mean, it was, it was grace that gave me a second chance. And, and so that is why I at that point in time, after 2.5 years of rebuilding my life and making amends and dealing with shame, to this day, that was 27 years, 28 years ago, Chris.
Wow.
But I still deal with shame every day of my life
Yeah. You could,
because of that. And so when when I started getting real with people,
yeah.
what I learned is there are millions of people like me
Yeah.
out there who just needed a voice that would be honest enough to say, you don't have to have your act together to put your life back together and to live a life of impact. There are all kinds, and I was having more impact than I ever did when I was a pastor of a, a congregation where people were driving 100 miles in every direction to hear me speak.
Mm.
And and so I was a broken stick, just just a broken stick, living a day at a time, trying to be real with people and real with myself. And that's when I started my company in Arizona. And I had no business starting a leadership company,
So
you know?
I want to firstly thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share that. I think that that's so impactful from someone in your stature to be able to have that level of humility and vulnerability and to share that. I think you're going to help a lot of people that are watching this, myself included, frankly, because I was not expecting that. Um, what what was the timeline between Rosetta and her grabbing you from as a pastor at 34? So you were working with her and continued, and then things broke, and then you went off and
Yeah,
started.
I was working, we had formed a company, and she and I had a company.
Mm,
Um, she was offered a position as the president of a, Ivy League school. So she said, and she knew I was getting all kinds of heck from my congregation.
mm,
So within 6 months, she had left, and then, um, I had moved from Michigan to California because I felt that this was not what what faith was supposed to be about. This is not
Yeah.
what a church is supposed to be about. But I left there, um, and when you're doing something, you got a congregation of 3,000 people, and you have an addiction to people pleasing, and every time you do something, you're making 1,000 people really upset with you and 2,000 happy. I left there really in a mess, not dealing with my addiction.
Right.
So it was only a matter of time. So 6 months later, it all fell apart. And so that's when, my wife in March of 19 so I left in 1997. It was March of 1998 that it all fell apart, and I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my family, I lost my job, I hurt hundreds of people who believed in me.
Oh,
And and, um, and don't think there weren't people who weren't happy about that because they knew something was off kilter.
yeah.
You know, I thought I was fooling everybody. The only person I was really fooling was myself. And so then it was a 2.5 year period of deep, deep work, um, and regaining for the first time new rhythms in my life and putting those it took me a year and a half to gain new muscle memory. I mean, Chris, I had so much shame that I remember I had moved to Arizona and I had tiles in my kitchen, in my shower. And I've shared this story, by the way, with thousands of people, that for every day that I went without some inappropriate decision, I'd count a tile. And the next day it'd be 2 tiles. And the next day it'd be 3 tiles. And each row had 32 tiles. The most I could ever get to was the 4th level of the tiles.
Uh,
And I'd start all over. And 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 but once I got sober, my mind began to after I got to 4th level, and then I went to the 5th level, and then I went to the 6th level, my mind shift was now about learning how to deal with your addiction instead of just the willpower of don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
yeah.
And so that's why you have to be sober long enough to really to start doing the deep work. And it took me until about a year and a half where new patterns were so ingrained in me that the old patterns had stopped. Um, and that's when I was ready to start a new venture.
Oh, you're blowing my mind right now. You mentioned that there were 4 or 5 addictions going on. Were you and pardon my bluntness here, was that referring to 4 or 5 affairs, or were there other addictions in your life
Oh,
beyond
listen,
people pleasing?
there were multiple one night stands,
Mhm.
you know, multiple, but it was love addiction. It was people pleasing. It was workaholism. It was codependence, the need to make other people feel good about you
Mm,
so that you could feel good about you. So I had no boundaries. I could not tell anybody no to anything because if you said no to someone and they had expectations, you would disappoint them and therefore you would be disappointed. I mean, multiple addictions going on, and which is common for most addicts. Um, and ironically, I never had a drinking problem. I never, to this day, I have not ever taken one toke of marijuana. If you put all the beer that I've drunk in my life, I could fill a third of a glass.
yeah. It's just
You know,
yeah, it's just
your
not on your
addictions
radar.
choose you. Your addictions choose you. You don't choose the addiction.
Wow. So you mentioned that you were in rigorous therapy. You were in the coma for a while. You're around family. You're with mom and your sister. You feel comfortable. You feel protected. At what point do you come out of the coma, literal coma, and you start going to therapy? Are you in you must have just been a shell of a man. I mean, that you've lost everything. How are you sustaining yourself? You're living with your mother? Is that what's happening?
That and it was the first time that my relationship with God became pure. You
Wow.
know, it was because what I learned is that even becoming a pastor had been really influenced by the need to please my dad. And 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 we later learned I answered the call to the wrong father. And and I mean, every major decision I had made up until then was out of some kind of broken pathology in my life. I mean, and so, and by the way, when you're saying I was with my mom and my sister and living with my mom at age 40 and having all these massive losses, um, I wasn't comfortable. I mean, I was living in agony one day at a time, knowing that there were people that when they thought of me, they thought of a lying, conniving con artist. And you know what? To this day, almost 30 years ago, there will be people that I will occasionally run into that they will see me as that person.
Oh,
And I had to learn, wait a second, I'm no victim. I created this.
mm,
Doesn't matter what influences that led me into that arena. I still made the decision on the playing field of what I did. And part of the consequences of that is you got to live with the fact that there will be people who will choose to see that you will always be that guy. And I had to learn how to accept that and know 30 years later, I'm not that guy anymore. I am not that man anymore. It took me a long time to get to that place. Um, and every once in a while, don't think if I hear a song on the radio that goes back to that period,
yeah.
it's something that I will always struggle with the rest of my life, but I'm managing it now. It's not managing me.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I have so many questions that um, so you pull yourself out of this, you start your business. Is this work, doctor? Is this work a foundation? It seems as if it is a foundational element of the leadership work that you're doing. And I'm assuming that it is. When you're working with these leaders, I'm assuming you need to extract real vulnerability from them. And we already addressed the fact that what gets in the way are these massive egos, right? And when that's in the way and you're addressing a room or a group of leaders, can you, how do you facilitate that window for them to be vulnerable? Do you do that one on one? Are you workshopping that? Because like this conversation, I know a lot of people are going to see it, but it feels like you're just having the conversation with me. I know that if this were a conversation in a room at my last gig where I was part of a C-suite, everybody would be puckered and quiet and eyes averted because everybody's got something that they're dealing with. How do you extract that?
Everybody has a story.
Yeah, go.
There's not a single person who doesn't have a story.
Yeah.
Part of my research, um, everything that we teach at our company is research based. And I was so aware of my own sense of being a fraud and being broken. There's a term out today called the fraud syndrome, the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome.
Yep. Yep.
Well, it's become a buzzword in the last 2 or 3 years. Well, I've been teaching this now for going on 26 years because I lived the fraud syndrome. And I wanted to understand, am I the only one who feels this pervasively broken and inadequate?
Mm,
And I started doing in-depth research using my sociology background,
mm,
and I created surveys, um, like I did when I did my PhD, well, my doctorate, um, to understand what was the average level of self-belief that the typical American leader that I dealt with had. What I found on a scale of 0 to 10, and I'm literally taking hundreds and hundreds of surveys, and I'm putting them together and giving you very quick information. But the average self-belief level of the typical American leader on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 means take me out back and shoot me now, I have no chance, to 10 being nirvana, which doesn't exist in terms of that level of self-belief. The average level of self-belief is a 2.7. That's the average level. It used to be a 6 in 1960. It's now as of 1998, it was a 2.7. Now I know that it's only gotten worse, and there are reasons for that. But at 2.7, your whole inner narrative is, I'm a fraud, and I hope that you don't ever find me out. I
well,
don't I don't want you to ever learn how overwhelmed I feel. I don't want you to ever feel that I have no place being in this place of leadership. And so what I learned is that applying my own recovery, you can actually change your self narrative. And what we found in our research is that the average effective, healthy leader has a self belief level of 8 or above. At 8, my self messaging is, I am enough. If I am a mistake, it doesn't make me a mistake. At 2.7 is, I am a mistake, and any mistake I make only affirms the fraud I am. And so what I found is that's why at 2.7, there's no way I'm going to let you be real. There's no way that I'm going to admit I made a mistake in a strategy that I approved and took my in front of my board. Because if I admit that, I'm affirming that I am a complete and utter mistake in my life. Well, so at 2.7, I am what I do. I'm performance based, and my entire sense of meaning comes from what other people think about me. My power comes from what other people think. At 8.0, my power comes in from an innate acceptance that warts and all, that nothing can take my value away from me. That if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean I am a mistake. It means it's an opportunity for accelerated learning and development and improvement. And so unless and so it is hearing the message over and over and over every day that I'm enough. And I created a whole set of exercises and methods that what we found. And Chris, I didn't believe it at first.
mm,
Um, I know I know how hard it is to change. And what we found when we would start working with leaders in their teens, when we'd first start working with them, the average level of self belief of these leaders was a 2.7. Well, 3 months later, after we started working doing this process that I slowly developed over 30 years, we found when we did the post-test, their self-belief level had gone from a 2.7 to an 8.
Wow.
I didn't believe it. I did not believe my own work, and I didn't believe it.
That-
Remember, I'm the fraud.
I was going to say that's a statement on your scale. That's crazy.
That's right.
Isn't that
I'm the
nuts?
fraud. There's no way that that I'm capable of creating this kind of thing. And yet the research kept showing over and over. Well, so what's that matter? When I'm at 2.7, if someone holds me accountable for a commitment that I made that I have not fulfilled, at 2.7, you having an adult conversation with me about the fact that, Fred, you committed to this team that you would deliver on this. And I just want to remind you, my friend, that you didn't deliver. Now, what do we need to help you to do to win here? Because you're losing credibility with your team. That's an adult caring conversation. At 2.7, you're attacking me. How dare you? I'm going to be defensive. I'm going to blame. How dare you? Look at what you've done. At 8.0, I see accountability as gift. Now, I don't like it. I'm never going to be comfortable with accountability, but I understand that you're coming from a place of respect and care about me, and I need to hear this. And at 2.7, I have to have the credit. At 8.0, you have a Rosetta that says, put Fred out there. He's winning with this audience. That's 8.0 behavior. At 2.7, um, I have to hire people that are not capable so that I can always be in charge. At 8.0, I'm hiring a team that's smarter than me, and I am thrilled. At 2.7, don't ever challenge me in front of my team.
Ooh.
At 8.0, I always want you to challenge me in front of my team because my team has to be able to see that I can accept feedback as the senior leader of this team, and that you see all these little shifts. So here's the major theme. Shifting from I am not enough to I am enough is the single biggest game changer in leadership. It's all internal. And most leaders are not willing to do this kind of deep work because they have to face themselves in the process.
Wow. Wow.
By the way, going back all the way back, my friend John Schneider that day in the plane, he was a whiz kid that was just trying to get his legs back under him because he had been fired by Dan Snyder, who was the at that time the owner of the Washington Redskins.
Mhm, mhm,
He was he was not a good man.
mm,
John had become at age in his 20s, he'd become the youngest general manager in the NFL, brought there by his head coach, by Marty Schottenheimer, when they were together at Kansas City. After 1 year, they had gone from 4-12 to 8-8. And the day after the season, Snyder came into my friend John's office and said, I want you to be with me on this. I'm going to fire Marty Schottenheimer because I wanted a winning season the first year. And John told him, no, this is not how you build a program. And not only that, but Marty Schottenheimer brought me here and I am loyal to him. And he has not done anything to deserve being fired. And no, Dan, I'm not doing it. And Dan fired him on the spot. And walking out of the room said to him, And I shouldn't, remember how I said he looked like he was 15? He said, I should have never hired anybody who looked young enough to be my paper boy in the first place.
Oh,
So John has never had a loss like this in his life. And so now he is with the Green Bay Packers. They all knew him and they had said, come here. But even though the Packers had confidence in him, John didn't have confidence in himself. And the last time he spoke his mind, he got fired. And so he's now in a situation where he's dealing with some situations where he's trying to challenge his boss, Ted Thompson, and on some personnel moves, and Ted's fighting him, and John's not standing up to him, and he's talking to me about no one respects me. He's not listening to me. And I said, John, I want to ask you a question. Are you standing up for your decision? He goes, no. I said, why? He said, because the last time that I stood up for what I believed in, I got fired, and I'm not going to put my family at 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 risk again. I mean, he's a shell. This kid sitting by me, he's he's in his 2.7 moment. His life had fallen apart. And I am destined to come into his life as a divine appointment to be put into his life as someone who has been broken and has been able to put it back together. This guy needs me, the law of attraction. And I looked at him and I said, John, I got a question for you. He tells this story all over the country now. This was years later. I said, I got a question, John. And you don't talk to NFL people like this. People like me, if you're talking to someone in the NFL, you've hit nirvana. You don't do anything to mess that up.
yeah, yeah,
Well, that's not me because now I know in my life, only truth matters and you better be real.
yeah.
I looked at him and I said, John, I want to ask you a question. When did you become a prostitute? He goes, what? What are you talking about? I said, John, you just told me the reason that you will not stand up for yourself and your convictions is because you need the money. And that if you challenge someone, you're going to lose your job. And John, uh, with all due respect, these are people who allow themselves to be violated every day because they don't think they have any other options and they're desperate for the money. John, how are you any different? And he goes, that's easy for you to say, Fred, because you can speak your truth and you can get fired and you won't get fired. I said, John, I'm doing that with you right now. I'm taking a risk with you to put something that most people would see this as a career moment. You've just gotten into the inside of the NFL, and I'm about to say something so bold to you. John, you could say to me right now, get out of here. I don't need this shit. I said, John, I do that. The only way that I ever got here was I quit being that person. And it became a transformative moment for John. And he went back and he found his mojo. Eventually, I helped him interview for the Seattle Seahawks general manager's job. In the last 15 years, outside of Bill Belichick, he is the single most winning GM in the NFL in the last 20 years. And he says it started that with the conversation that, Fred, you were willing to be real with me when I was broken and no one knew it. Well, you were willing to be able to have a conversation with me that no one else had the courage to have. I said, John, I had that conversation with you because I needed to have people to have that conversation with me a long time ago when no one had the guts to have it. And I said, John, all I'm doing is treating you the way I wanted to be. I wish someone would have been treated. That's called leadership, John.
Oh,
And so Chris, it wasn't an issue of me trying to wait for the moment. It was just just being honest with people, being sincere with people, being genuine, doing it in a way that isn't judgmental.
Right.
Because when you've got the skeletons in my closet that were there, you have no every time I point a finger, I've got pointing right back at I have no place to judge people.
Yeah.
Well, in the course of real conversations, people start putting together, are you real or not? And when they see that you're real, they have enough pain that they take a risk. I think I can get real with this guy. And people start talking to me and their real story comes out. And then they start going, oh my gosh, my team needs this.
Mm,
And I understand you've got a method, you've got this process that you can help people change the way they feel about themselves. And when that changes, it changes the way they deal with others. And when that changes, it changes your outcomes. And when your outcomes change, your results change. And that's how it happened. And every one of the biggest game changers in my career all came because of those serendipitous moments of a broken person who needed desperately another person who has been broken, who can shed some wisdom into their life. And none of that would have happened without that moment of sheer brokenness in my life. What I thought was the worst moment in my life became the greatest moment in my life. I'm having more of an impact now than I've ever had before. It, I'm a hillbilly from West Virginia, and it, I've been this week. I mean, tomorrow I've got an interview with USA Today. Last week I had an interview with the Washington Post. I've been on CBS Radio. I've been on Mad Dog. I've been on NBC Sports. I don't know a damn thing about sports. You know, to say that any of when I was looking over trying to kill myself that day, thinking that I could not know any greater pain in my life, to think that what is happening right now, I couldn't have ever imagined that. And ironically, at that stage in my life way back then, that's what I was living for. I wanted exposure. I wanted everybody to know who I was. Today, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. And that's when all of a sudden these things are happening. When I wanted them and when I was trying, it would have never happened because it was a gimmick. It was another way of of presenting yourself out in front of people. Today, it's just been about being real. And if someone says, I think you're full of crap, I can go, well, you know what? I am. I am because I can tell you I've got proof that my life has been full of crap.
Huh.
But I can tell you when I decided to get real, it, things began to change. How can you argue with that?
Yeah, you can't.
I can't argue with a person's life experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I have no idea how I'm being helpful. I'm all over the place with you, but I'm just
no, doctor, I have to tell you, um, I didn't know what to expect in the conversation. I knew it was going to be powerful, but this is beyond words because, like I said earlier, I know this is going to help a lot of people, but I think you just mapped out the story of my life. And, and frankly, you know, the reason why I started this podcast is because I think I intrinsically knew that all those things were true. The sort of the beginning of your break, going on in my life. And, I guess my question for you at this point is you have so much wisdom and you work with these high performance leaders, but I think so many people can benefit from this real talk, right? Like this real stripped away this is what you need to do if you want to be great. And if you don't, fine, but whatever. How can I guess there's two layers to the follow-up question. What can people do on their own to help, whittle away at that ego and get to a point where they can have conversations like this in the workplace and in their personal life, right? And how do you do that as a company, in terms of how do people work with your company? How do they interact with them? Is it a weekly thing? Is it a month-long retreat? Is it a weekend retreat? Like, how do you interact with your client base is the first part. And then how can people do it on their own if they don't have the means to interact with your team?
Yes. Wow. Well, let's talk about it on an individual basis. First of all, change always starts with an inward acceptance that you don't have your act together. It always starts with an inward acceptance that I need help, um, and that I need to change. Um, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to change. That's called inward surrender. And when you're sincere about that and you say that out loud and you put it out there, some people say put it out there to the universe.
Yeah.
I call that, for me, saying saying that to God. Um, I need help, and I know I need to improve, and I know I need to change, and I know that I've created a debris field all around me, and I don't want that. I wanna raise my influence. If a person is sincere about that, that sets off what we know is the universal law of attraction.
Mm.
The universal law of attraction says, if I've declared and I'm serious about it that I'm at a 2 and I want to become an 8, suddenly things will begin to happen in your life, that people will begin to come into your life that it would have never come there, who are already experiencing what you are committed to experience.
It's why I think why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
It's
And
wonderful.
all I can tell you is, when people say, "I think that's esoterical and that's full of crap," I said, you believe what you believe. All I can tell you is I've just seen it happen over and over and over and over, and it's happened in my life. And so that's the first thing. The companies that seek us out, ironically, are not the companies that need us. The companies that need us are the ones that are so broken, but they're so caught up in 2.7. I can't let anybody know that our team needs help. I can't let anybody know, as a CEO, that I've got some issues in my life. I can't let them know that. I can't let anybody know under the hood. I can't. And those are the companies that are always great at spinning yarns about themselves, but everybody in the company knows there's a bunch of crap happening
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Um, the ones that don't need us are the ones that called it. I started working with the Seattle Seahawks after they won the Super Bowl, because John knew it's the little tiny
Yeah.
pivots.
It's that maintenance of the
That's right, and
maintaining greatness. Yeah.
it's the little tiny edges, and the edges in the NFL are never about finding a new strategy, a new play, a new philosophy. It's always about, how do I get the people on my team further engaged and committed to the cause? It's relational, it's
Mm,
emotional.
yes.
That's where the edges are.
So fascinating. It's so fascinating because I feel like it's such a human element, like the human element, like the most human element, like source energy, God, whatever you want to call it, our being connected, that you can observe on a field. You'll see the team and the coaches, the way they interact and how they, and you'll feel that the magic, you'll feel energy change on the field, and you just be like, they're going to win this. You could just tell, you could feel it. They're smiling, they're having fun, they're being silly with each other. You could tell they respect each other by the locker room interviews and all that. It is really, really interesting. And so, and then I guess it will lead into, like, so how do they get there with you guys? How do you interact with them? Do you like
Well, first of all, what we do, um, is we tell them right off the bat, there's no fairy dust out there. There's no magic pill. There's no secret sauce, a sacred thing that a secret thing that someone's just created. It's always timeless, and so there's three basic philosophies that intertwine everything that we do. Number one, leadership has changed. Leadership has changed. It's no longer about knowledge. Who has the most knowledge is the leader, because everybody has access to knowledge today. The internet has exploded. Think about what artificial intelligence is going to do.
yeah,
So knowledge, even more than ever, is going to be the smallest level of factor of whether you're a leader or not. Second, um, any your competence. If you're best at your craft, you're a leader. We've all seen people who are great at their crafts and are poor leaders. Anybody can train themselves to expertise because of the internet today. And the last is position. If you have the title and if you have the corner office, that makes you a leader. Um, there's a philosophy that says the more a person is exposed to information and ideas, as that exposure increases, respect for authority decreases. In other words, everyone has knowledge to expertise. And the person who says, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, is the person who's most not the leader.
yeah,
And so, what has to, so leadership today is now about the three pillars of leadership today are no longer knowledge, authority, and competence. The three pillars of leadership today are all relational, emotional based. Authenticity, are you for real? Are you who you say you are? Transparency, are you giving me all the information? Do you trust me enough to tell me the truth, even the uncomfortable information? And third, um, uh, do, do I know you? Vulnerability. And vulnerability, people think vulnerability is soft. Vulnerability is courageous. Vulnerability is me having that conversation with John Schneider that day when he says, and you called me a hoe. Um, eh, that was vulnerability. There's nothing soft about that. Vulnerability, there's nothing soft enough sitting down in front of your team and saying, gang, we've got some things that we've committed to and we're not doing it. And if we're not willing to change, we've got to make some changes. That's vulnerability.
yeah,
And so leadership has changed. So we help leadership teams understand how they have to change first before they ever get their teams to change.
uh,
So it always starts on the inside. So one half of our process, we have a 3-month process. It's 9 sessions, 3 hours each session. They also have work to do between each session that's all about them trying to figure out what they do to keep sabotaging their trust. Um, because if I'm at 2.7 and I get an 8.0 opportunity, I'm going to blow that 8.0 opportunity up every time to get it down to my self-belief level every time. That was what I did on the bridge that day.
man,
You
you're
so
speaking such truth. It's like it's keep going.
so what has to happen is this. Our process says, that's what most people do. We have a process that will raise your self-belief level from 2.7 to 8 if you do the work and you have the courage to do the work. When you raise the self-belief level, your results will come up to match your self-belief level. So leadership has changed. It's an inside out job. So the first half of our process is helping you to change you on the inside so that you become relevant to your team. The second half of the process is teaching you the cutting edge leadership tools that Rosetta taught me. You with me?
But
Because I've seen a lot of leadership approaches that talk about inward change, but they don't teach you how to set priorities. They don't teach you how to make focused decisions. They don't teach you how to hold people accountable. Now, I've seen people who will teach you to read this book on holding people accountable, but they don't tell you why you won't do it because I'm at 2.7. And if I hold you accountable, you're going to be pissed at me.
right,
What we
right.
figured out
Yeah.
is how to mirror both together.
Mm. Profound.
Now,
Profound.
then there is a year follow up. And then we will never work with the team until we work with their highest level team first. Because if the senior team is not engaged, when we're pushing on their mid managers, they know that their senior team hasn't done this.
Yeah.
You're going to give them an exit strategy inside their head saying, why should I do this hard work when our CEO and my boss won't do this?
Yeah.
And so I walked away from Boeing, a multi-million dollar contract with Boeing in my first year because the CEO refused to take his senior leadership team through our process. And but if but and I said, wait a second, I just spent 2 days interviewing a bunch of your engineers who walked off the job in Spokane yesterday, which is why you called me up here.
Right.
And they're telling me the reason why they're walking off, it's not about the money, is they don't believe in the integrity of the senior leadership team. That's you, Mr. So and so. You talk about vulnerability, and that was a $10 million contract.
Ugh.
And the guy said,
Get out.
excuse me, you're telling me that you're willing to walk away from this if our team doesn't go through this. Everything inside of me was saying, oh, don't say this. You just started this company a year ago and you're a nobody and this is something big and you could blow it. Just go along with it. But I had just come through a recovery process that said if you tell a lie, you will go back into your dysfunction. All I can do is tell the truth. I said, sir, all I can tell you is this process won't work if you don't go through it.
Yeah.
That's all I know. And you're going to pay me a lot of money for this process to work. And sir, I will waste your money. And when this process doesn't work, you're going to tell all the folks in the industry, this guy is no different than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I said, sir, that's why I can't do it.
Yep.
And he said, well, I'm sorry. I said, well, I'm sorry too. And I walked out looking confident. Inside, I'm going, what have I done? The next day, Washington Post front page, that gentleman indicted for a payola program with an Air Force um, uh, officer who bought all the contracts for the Air Force.
Ooh.
They had been working together. She went to jail. He lost his job and his career.
Boom.
I went, oh my gosh, thank you. That the truth, being truthful to your convictions actually works.
Wow.
And so that's why we are willing to walk away. Our success is not based upon who we've said yes to.
Mm.
It's based on who we've said no to. And so we'll teach a company how to build your entire success based on which customers you say no to, and which partners you say no to, and which strategies you say no to. And you quit saying no to the bling and you start saying yes to the principles and the convictions. That's our process. And it's all based upon the things that I learned in my brokenness.
Wow. Wow.
And so Typically, we will start with the senior team. The rule of thumb is you have to have about 20% of the company population go through this process to get enough critical mass
Yeah.
so there's enough momentum that it leads to transformation. And then through every different layer, eventually we get to a point that we're doing train the trainer and things like that. Different layers have different methods,
Right. Right.
but it's not training. It is a deep dive work into yourself and into your team. Here's what happens when you've got 9 people on a team and 7 of them choose to change.
Mm,
The 2 who won't change, because this is a bunch of crap, they're everybody else is changing, and these 7 seeing they're not paying the price,
mm,
they lose influence.
mm,
The unhealthy people who cannot function in a healthy environment will jettison themselves or they get jettisoned.
mm,
And then what happens is if you've got 7 people, one person at a time who starts changing, people in our process will say, well, unless that person changes, we're not going to change our wait a second. I'm not interested in that person.
mm,
I'm only interested in, can you change?
mm,
And if you change, and if this person changes, and this person makes a couple pivots, and this person makes a couple pivots, if you've got 7 people who change and make these pivots, their teams begin to change.
mm.
And it just begins to take on a life of its own. And that's why we have seen companies that have gone from a 100% turnover to a 7% turnover, or a company that their return on investment uh, was 4,000 to 1 because of the changes we saw a cancer research company that was on the verge of going out of business because the executive team had zero trust in themselves. And it was hard work, but 3 years later, that company had made a $100 million a year turnaround, um, because of the work that they did. This stuff works,
Wow.
but it is not magic and it's hard.
Yeah, it's rigorous. How
It's
how do
rigorous.
how does Sarah in Kentucky who hears this and she knows everybody around her needs this work, but she wants to do this work on herself. Maybe she can't interact with your company, but what do you recommend as
Well,
like
we do a couple things.
yeah.
First of all, I started when I moved here to Green Bay, no one knew us. So I started a process that once a month I would do a 1 hour presentation to anyone who came, and I would put as much effort. I would treat it like a $25,000 speech, and I'd do it for free. And I would say, "Come," and uh, there's no agenda. All we want to do is pour into you. And if it happens to meet a need for you, great. And if it meets a need, you're going to start telling other people. And you may even come to us and say, how do I figure out more about working with you all? The first month we did that, we had 16 people. 8 of them were my teammates, and 8 of them were family members
I knew.
that we begged to come. Who are these people? Are these psychological? Are these corporate shrinks? They didn't know who we were. Um, last month, we do this once a month. We know that we have somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 people every month that are watching these things.
So we can just go to your website and sign
You can
up.
go to our website and register to get it. It's called Think Tank. You can get initiative1.com, ONE.com, or you can go on Facebook and you can register for our monthly think tanks. Now,
And I'm in.
that's how people get to connect us and they start learning about us on their terms.
Mm,
And it's not some sales pitch. That's the number one way that people are getting to find out about us. The other is people. We have what is called mixed groups.
mm,
Well, we'll take one person from this company and one person from this company, or a CEO who is just retired and he's wanting to figure out what he wants to do with the rest of his or her life.
mm.
And we'll put 8 of those people through a process, and we'll create an individualized process for that group of 8.
I love that.
We call that a mixed group. And then we've got them for 14 months. They go through this rigorous process. We also do coaching with them along the entire 14 months.
Mm,
And so, you know, it people ask me all the time, Chris, where do you get your passion?
yeah, man.
And here's what I tell people. There is no greater passion than a than from a dead man who's been given a second chance to live again. And that's my story. I I was a fraud. I had hurt hundreds of people. I was a con artist. Deep down, I was desperate to try to find validity in my life, and I was doing it all in the wrong circles. It was all out of a sincere motive of trying to find meaning in my life, and I was doing it in the wrong ways. And somehow, in spite of that, I was given a second chance when I didn't deserve it. And that's why I am so passionate. And when some arrogant CEO looks at me and says, "I think you're a bunch of crap, full of a bunch of crap," I don't get offended by it. It's just I know what I know, and you can't undo that.
Yeah.
And so next, if you don't want if you want to listen, I'll never forget someone in Tucson, Arizona one time said to me, "I know what you do. You brainwash people.
Oh,
I know you." And I looked at her and I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." She said, "So you want me to drink the Kool-Aid?" I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, let me make it very clear. We all drink someone's Kool-Aid."
oh, oh,
I said, "I drank the Kool-Aid many years that was full of arsenic that said you'll never be anybody. You're a fraud. I drank my own Kool-Aid. Ma'am, I'd rather drink Kool-Aid not laced with arsenic, but laced with vitamins that say you can do this. You can get off the mat. You can use your failures for good. I'd rather drink that Kool-Aid, ma'am. The question is not whether you drink Kool-Aid. It's whose Kool-Aid are you going to drink? So I'm in the process of giving out wonderful vitamin timeless Kool-Aid.
thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of my like, I'm getting emotional right now because I feel like I really needed to hear all of this from you today. And
Well, brother, I felt from day one, the moment, listen, one of the gifts of brokenness is discernment. A person who has been to hell and back can tell in an instant when a person is going through hell. I'll never forget, I had a lady in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was working with this major hospital system. She said to me, "I don't know who you are. You're either the devil or you're an angel because you have this ability within 5 minutes to look into a person's soul. And I feel completely naked around you." I will never forget that moment because what she was saying was this: you've been given a gift that you can either manipulate people or you can use it as a gift. And for years, it was the price of that brokenness that gave me the wisdom to look within people. And there is a sacred responsibility that comes with that. And Chris, because of the pain that you've been through your life, you've been given an extra sense to look deeply into people and to see and to cut through the crap and to see where they are. And that is leadership. But if you're going to, I tell people, look, if you've gone through hell and back, make it work for you, man, and make it work for other people. The price of wisdom is always the pain of brokenness. Make it work for you.
Thank you, sir. You're a special human being.
Well, you're a special human being, brother.
Thank
I the very first time, within 5 minutes, I went, he's got some story."
you. Yeah.
And the reason why he's on this podcast, this guy's a giver. This guy is a giver. And he's given from a well that's pretty deep. Now, he may not believe it, but he does. That's what I was thinking the entire time, because guess what? That's my story.
Thank you again, sir.
We never even got to the story of John Snyder. That may be another deal.
I feel like I've eaten up your entire day, but I would love to have you back on because
Okay.
I've never enjoyed learning for 2 hours straight more in my life. I learned so much today. Thank you.
You know, Chris, I I for years and years and years, um I had this burning desire to be known in the world. And it was for the wrong reasons, and it never happened. And and it was after um I had been so utterly broken, and then I found healthier perspective. I notice I said healthier. Um, it's always gonna be a journey for me. Um, I gave up on that dream that someday I would be speaking before thousands and thousands of people, or I would have a podcast that would go viral, or that I would do a leadership lesson that 17,000 people would lock in. Um, I've given up on those days, and I'm at peace with it. And um, but how do people like me somehow find that audience that I mean, that there is a quiet sadness in my life that somehow, because of choices that I made, that opportunity to influence thousands will never be there. And now the motive is pure, but how does that ever happen? You know? And so to have opportunities like this today, it's just it's such a gift to me. I feel the same way in talking to you that I did with, why am I talking to CBS today? On why is Good Morning America reaching out to me? You know, um, so I don't know what the future holds.
Well, I'm going to do everything in my power to get this in front of as many people as I possibly can because I think it's a very important message today more than ever. The human element of leadership and life and our work and um, you just addressed everything. Humanity. I think it's you're doing wonderful work. Please keep up that good work. Thank you for what you do.
How can I help you as a new friend? And I mean that sincerely.
Think you have, sir. I think, I think, I think, I think come back on and keep teaching so that I can share with as many people as possible. I think you just struck at every story, you struck a different chord with me. So I think I have a lot to think about right now. And I
All
thank
right,
you for even
man.
asking that question. Please let me know how I can help you. I don't know how. Um, but like I said, I will try to get this in front of as many people as I possibly can so that they can learn from you. And
Thank you, my friend.
thank you again. I appreciate you.
You're the real deal, man.
You are
This has
too.
been a real honor.
Thank you. Thank you.